impossible it all is. Next slide. Now we're going to work out how cost-effective this measure is in reducing the global temperatures by 1 Celsius, or just under 2 Fahrenheit. And you'll be pleased to see it only costs $4.7 quadrillion to prevent 1 Celsius of global warming by measures as cost-effective, or as you may think, ineffective, as wiping Maryland off the map altogether. You can imagine how much less cost-effective it would be to try to do anything less than wiping Maryland off the map altogether, which is what the plan proposes. On we go. So then, what will be the cost of abating all the warming that will happen over the next 40 years? Well, it's, in fact, that's about 1 Kelvin, so no surprises there. It's 4.1 quadrillion. That is $588,000 per head of global population over the next 40 years. Madam, I'll take your check now. And run off to Paraguay with it. Then we have, that's about 250% of the entire global gross domestic product, of everything that we make and sell throughout the period. That's how much it would cost just to make 1 Celsius of global warming go away. On we go. Now we're going to do a rather interesting thing, which is to work out how much it costs to sit back, enjoy the sunshine or the October snow. The Gore effect is working overtime here. And we're going to use a concept called discounting to present value, which is a standard economic method of appraisal which every industry uses when it's planning for the long term. So here goes. Now, Stern uses an artificially low discount rate of 0.1%. I won't bother to explain the theory of the Poisson theorem here. We'll just show that this is basically gibberish. And this is the gibberish which is lifted straight out of the Stern report. I put it there so that those of you who are economists can enjoy how completely absurd it is. A 0.1% discount rate is a joke. It is on that joke that the entire global warming scale, economically speaking, is founded. And we're going to show what a difference that joke makes to the figures. So on we go. Now we take the correct intertemporal discount rate, which is a minimum of 5%. And Václav Klaus says the reason for this, he's the President of the Czech Republic, very sound, proper conservative, undermining current economic development, which you do by using an artificially low interest rate, harms future generations. And if they're talking about the need to preserve future generations, the last thing you do is wreck the economy now. So the minimum market discount rate, says Klaus, is 5%. And he cites authorities on both sides of the global warming argument for that. And that is a very low rate. I would normally use 8 or 12. We're going to use 5. We're going to be as nice to the bedwetters as we can. It is be nice to bedwetters week. So on we go. So what's the cost of doing nothing? We can now, we've got a discount rate of 5%, we can work this out. We start with Stern's figures. And what we have to do is convert Stern's cost of various climate actions into a real cost after allowing for the fact that here we use a 0.1% intertemporal discount rate, and we're going to use the correct minimum rate, which is 5%. And to convert between those two rates, that even simpler equation up there is how an economist would do this. And what it shows at the bottom line is that Stern's 20% cost of GDP, of the whole of GDP over the 20th century, which would be gobbled up if global warming was really bad, comes down to just 1.5% of GDP the moment we use the correct discount rate. But suppose we then look at the 3% of GDP that he says it would cost if the IPCC is right in saying we're going to get, say, 3 Celsius of warming over the next century. That comes down to 0.2% of global GDP. That is the cost of doing absolutely nothing about the climate at all for 100 years, and then taking the damage that would result from doing nothing for 100 years. 0.2% of global GDP. That's what a difference. Changing the discount rate from the bogus rate that he used to the correct rate that I've used. That's the difference it makes. On we go. So now we can look at various discount rates here, various inaction costs, if you like, ranging from Stern at the top down to the market rate at the bottom. And the market rate is the one that any economist would use. And essentially looking at 0.2 to 1.5% of GDP, that's the cost of doing nothing, even if the most extreme climatic results were to occur. On we go. So that means that, and you'll love this, that the cost of shutting down Maryland altogether for 40 years, that would be 1,000 times more expensive than the cost of simply doing nothing, allowing sea level to rise and all the other disasters that they imagine. It's 1,000 times more expensive to do nothing, to take action on the climate than it is to do nothing. And as a person who used to do investment appraisals for Margaret Thatcher, on the whole, I think I would probably recommend against this one. And indeed, it doesn't actually matter very much what discount rate you take. Even if we take Stern's 0.1% discount rate at the left there, still at the 3% of GDP cost he imagines, you're looking at, it's still nearly 100 times more expensive to shut Maryland down completely than simply to do nothing about the climate at all. On we go. So there is a summary of the effect of going all the way with PlanFairyland and shutting your state down altogether. 0.0017 Celsius of warming forestalled, cost of $4 or $5 quadrillion to forestall 1 Celsius of warming. That's going to cost nearly $600,000 per head of global population, and it's going to be somewhere around 170 to 1,100 times more expensive to take action to make global warming go away than to do nothing. So the economic conclusions are very straightforward. On we go. Is CO2 mitigation cost effective? No, it isn't. There are 3 bands of estimates here. At the top in red, you've got the cost of the predictions made by governments, the US Cap and Trade Bill, the UK government's estimate of things, the Canada coal regulations. All of these are things they suggested in advance. They said, we think this will happen. Even those come out at around 10 times more expensive to take action about the climate than to do nothing and pay the cost of the damage and adapt in a focused way. If you look at real-world policies where they've actually put them into effect so we know what they're costing and they can't get away with the, I'm going to use a rude word, ladies block your ears, bullshit, then you'll see it's around 100 times more expensive. That's the green figures, they're 100 times more expensive to make global warming go away than to do nothing. But you'll see that abolishing Maryland, down the bottom there, comes in the Fairyland category, where this is the political gesture politics, where a state of the US thinks that by taking climate action it's going to save the world from rising sea level. It's just pathetic when you think about it. And you can see they are into 1,000 to even 10,000 times more expensive to take action than not take action if you go down the route of gesture politics, which is what the Maryland plan actually is. And so now PlanMaryland, that's the economic case, and it's really a very straightforward one. Now I'm conscious that we are running a little bit out of time. I could go through the other points on this plan now, or I could stop and carry on with the rest of the agenda. Which would people like me to do? Let's take a vote. Hands up for Monckton carrying on. Hands up for Monckton shutting up. See me afterwards. All right, I'll carry on, but I'll be very quick about it. I'm going to go through another few assertions made in the Maryland plan. We've dealt with the economic assertion that something must be done because we've got to save the planet, blah, blah, blah. We've seen what complete, I mean, really hysterically, hilariously bad nonsense that was. Now we're going to go on. And this is their proposal for a 25% reduction in statewide greenhouse gas emissions from 2006 levels by 2020. And you know have a law on the statute book of Maryland that says they've got to achieve this. The King-Canute law, I call it. Here we go. The GGRA, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. Over 10 years, you reduce global emissions by 0.035%. Oh, look. Marvellous, CO2 concentration will fall. This is calculation based on the IPCC's own methods, and nothing wrong with any of this. From 412 parts per million down to 411.992. That will forestall 0.00005 Kelvin, or 1/20,000th of a Celsius degree. It's about 1/10,000th of a Fahrenheit degree, and that is 1/1000th of the minimum threshold below which no detection of global warming forestalled can be measured by any modern method or instrument. So even if this policy were to work, they'd have absolutely no way of knowing that it happened.